And here's the thing. I tell you what, let's go to the pub. There we go. We're off to the boozer that is the talkRADIO Tavern. And if you're watching us, you'll see behind us we've arrived in the old rubber-dub-dub. A permit for a pint, a chit for a Cinzano. That could be the order of the day. Is a vaccine passport the only way to get our freedoms back, particularly when it comes to ordering a libation down at your local pub? Goers could be asked to provide a vaccine certificate. Boris Johnson has told MPs, saying it was up to individual publicans. That's what he's saying now. A review is looking into whether people should have to prove they've been vaccinated as lockdown measures ease. A government source told the waiting press committee that the option of allowing people to show a negative test was also being looked at. One Tory MP, Steve Baker, said it was a ghastly trap and unfair to penalise those advised not to have the vaccine. There could be no way back from here. A smiley face on your lapel is not going to cut it. Look, let's cut to the chase. It's a killer pandemic. It's on the loose. It's incredibly virulent. It isn't flu, very easy to catch if you're elderly or vulnerable. It can cause all manner of horrendous complications. Death is a real possibility. You could even be one of those under 50s who defies the stats and then ends up on a ventilator. No way back. 2 million dead. This is a plague, for goodness sake. Why wouldn't you want to protect yourself? Are you really so selfish? You wouldn't want to protect other people? You'd be relaxed about passing this on to someone else? You might be fit and well, but think of your old Nan. A quick hug with Granny and you could have sealed her fate. Things like this spread like wildfire. Why would you not want to protect yourself and other people? Would you really surrender public safety for the sake of a pint? Now, that's one argument, of course. Much of that is cobblers. It's hysterical nonsense that is out there really to scare us into thinking, well, the only way around this, of course, is so I must have the government injection, so therefore I'm nice and safe and all is fine and dandy. I can go and order a pint as often as I like because I've got my certification. It's a permit for a pint. Dead simple. What could be? Well, yes and no. The last time I looked, the vaccination is not compulsory. It might be desirable in some quarters. We know this thing works, by the way, and nobody is suggesting you don't get a vaccine. On balance, this compromises me a little bit, but at this point, I'm genuinely concerned about the libertarian aspect of this. We haven't really seen this. I know that the example Boris Johnson gave was that, well, there are surgeons that have to have a hepatitis jab to make sure that they're neatly protected from that particular problem. There are some countries you still visit where you may still have to have a jab. In the past, we've had smallpox, and then, of course, you go through the routine things, rubella and MMR and all the things that you have as a kid. All of those things are there. Why would anybody give a hoot about a vaccine that, by the way, is going to afford you 80 to 90% protection from ending up on a hospital bed? 0344 499 1000. There is something deeply concerning about this. I don't know the answer because I'm aware that it's a conundrum. But here we are on the cusp of getting our freedoms back. 2 weeks on Monday. Oh boy, 2 weeks on Monday. How much are you looking forward to 2 weeks on Monday? 2 weeks on Monday is going to be the best day ever. It's going to be all the Christmases and all the birthdays that we've all ever had, all wrapped into one nice, neat freedom package. The big green light from Downing Street will glimmer against the day as we go about our business. Haircuts, gyms, shops, pubs, restaurants. Outside in a car park, but nonetheless, pubs and restaurants. 0344 499 1000. I can't tell you. I genuinely cannot find the words to describe just how excited I am about April the 12th. There better be no cancellation because I'm going to have the right royal hump if there is. April the 12th is our D-Day. April the 12th is the day we begin the final time we have to say goodbye to a lockdown and we return to a semblance of normality. And just as we're about to tiptoe our way to our freedoms, which once upon a time we took for granted, we've spent the best part of the last year having them either curtailed or removed. And as we make our way gradually towards that totemic day of April the 12th, the mere idea that the Prime Minister just drops into conversation, well, there's precedent for this. perfectly normal. Can we hear that clip again, Amy? This was him responding to an MP when he was asked this question.
The ordinary citizen going to the pub. So do you recognise that distinction for COVID vaccine certification?
I think that that's the kind of thing that, may be up to individual publicans will. It may be up to the landlord.
Maybe up to suddenly I'd say out of nowhere, pretty much. Well, we've speculated on this. We know that some travel will perhaps insist on that. What I'm failing to understand here, he's the Prime Minister, by the way. So when he says something in passing, it's not like you or I says something in passing. He's the PM. That's why this is headline news today. Now, there's a big part of me that thinks this probably won't happen. Really? It's not going to happen on April the 12th, right? They're not going to have the infrastructure up and running. But already some pubs chains, and we'll speak to one of the biggest in just a little bit, are concerned. They've got natural questions about this. Well, what are we meant to do? As publicans, we don't want anybody catching a bad virus on our property and dropping dead or passing it on to Gran and something terrible happened. So they're kind of compromised, a lack of information there. So when the PM speaks, it's not an aside. It's not something we can just ignore and say, well, he was just thinking aloud. He's the Prime Minister, for goodness sake. This is substantial news. And what he should have done as a responsible Prime Minister, I would have thought, and help me out here if I've got this all back to front, is to suggest that if there's going to be checks, then surely there's two ways of doing this. You might have the vaccine, or you might opt for a test. And you would be able to show you've had a negative test. Now that completely changes the entire narrative. That absolutely alters everything that would concern the likes of me when I'm being compelled to have a government injection potentially against my will. But I don't mind having a little injection a little blood test to check whether I've got it. I'm fine with that. That makes some sense. That's the perfect medical alternative. If somebody can tell me which bit of that doesn't make sense, I'm all ears. 0344 499 1000. I think what a lot of us are sniffing, and this wouldn't have been the case had we not sensed that over the last year there's been quite a lot that's been said that hasn't happened, and things we never thought could happen have happened. So we've lived in this sort of minefield of information and misinformation and broken promises and nearly but not quite and all the rest of it that has gone with this. And that's not necessarily one particular person's fault. I get it. It's been chaotic. It's a global pandemic. It's not a good look. It's not easy to navigate. I understand the difficulties. But because of that, because we have sensed that our political masters are not always on the money when they speak out loud, there is a little bit of me that thinks, hang on, is this the direction of travel now? A vaccine passport for the pub, a permit for the pub, a chit for your Chinzano. Is that the way it's going? 0344 499 1000. Surely, by any measure, the alternative is to have a test. And you rock up at the Rose and Crown or the Red Lion, and if somebody says, what have you got there? You had the vaccine? No, but don't worry. You wave the paperwork and say, look, I've got a negative test 30 minutes ago. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt, job's a good one. I'll have a pint, please. Simple, straightforward stuff. If we're going to get to a stage where that isn't accepted, why didn't the Prime Minister say that? He's the Prime Minister. He can't afford to be loose and casual with words of that magnitude. An entire industry depends on his words. The faith of the British public depend on his words. You can't suddenly suggest, well, yeah, landlords, publicans, they can make their mind up. Wow. I'm already ironing my jacket ready for April the 12th. And suddenly I'm told I might have to have a vaccine to go in there. What? If he's going to say that, then at least put the alternative in. And surely the alternative of a test would be just as authentic in terms of satisfying the establishment that you haven't got the COVIDs. 0344 499 1000. I want to know what you sense from this, what you're taking from this as we move towards that magic day of April the 12th. What is your feeling when you hear the Prime Minister talk about vaccinations to get a pint? Speak with Jonathan Neame, who's the Chief Executive of Shepherd Neame Brewery down in Kent. Jonathan, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Ian.
The one thing I guess you guys need more than anything is clarity.
Absolutely, and we thought we had it a couple of weeks ago when the Prime Minister set out his roadmap, which we were very satisfied with and led to the point of June the 21st where he said there would be no legal limits or restrictions after this point. So we are slightly baffled that there appears to be the possibility of some backdoor restrictions still applying.
Yeah, and as I said a second ago, I mean, when a Prime Minister makes a casual remark, there is no such thing as a casual remark, of course, when you're in that job. So everybody, particularly your industry, is looking at this and undoubtedly scratching your head a little bit this morning.
Absolutely. I mean, I think throughout this, we've been rather baffled why pubs have been separated and distinguished from non-essential retail. And again, we've got a situation where there's this proposal, but kind of why does it just apply to our environment? Is it because of size or activity, or is it because of dwell time? If it's dwell time, people will spend just as long in non-essential retail or grocers or other environments as they will in hospitality.
I've always thought that was rather strange, and particularly since I thought pubs did really rather well in terms of the social distancing and all that was required when we had that sort of brief easing of the lockdown. I've lost count of how many of your pubs, Jonathan, I've been in. I grew up in Kent. I think the first pub I ever drunk in was a Shepherd Neame pub. Obviously, I was 18. And, from going in, I could see how the staff and the management and obviously the head office there in Faversham, that you'd put into place very good measures to make sure that everything was adhered to.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's essential that any operator reassures their customers that their environment is safe. And we went to huge lengths, as others did in the sector. 450 million was spent on screens and social distancing and one-way systems and training and this, that, and the other. And the interesting thing is the consumer research at that time, after lockdown 1, said that people felt safest in the pub environment than they did in almost any other environment. So it does seem baffling to us that we still seem to be in this position where we're being separated for separate behaviour.
Yeah. What do you sense, that what would you like to do? Because I floated the idea at the beginning that surely if it's about safety, it wouldn't necessarily have to be a vaccination, but a certificate proving you've had a negative test would do pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the destination that all of us need as a society is to get back to the same level of civil liberties as we had before. If you think what a pub is in particular, a pub is one of the most inclusive and diverse and welcoming and hopefully relaxed environments you're going to find in the world. If you start putting barriers to entry in, you change the fundamental nature of what a pub is about. So, I think it goes to the heart of discrimination issues, civil liberties, data protection. It really troubles me that as a society we're even thinking of going down this route.
Yeah, and in terms of April the 12th, I don't know how many of your establishments have outdoor facilities, Jonathan, but I'm assuming that you've been gearing up for some time for that date, regardless of this story.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, we're going to open about 2/3 of our pubs, maybe some of the ones in urban areas not on that date. But they will all be open on May the 17th. I think a critical thing for us is we do not expect to make any money at all from April the 12th because it's difficult with just gardens only. But it's really important to get our teams back to work who have been sitting on the sidelines for a staggering 297 days during this crisis. And they need to, recover their mojo, their way of life, their sense of purpose, and that's what's most important to us at this time.
Indeed. Jonathan, thank you. Great to have you on with us. Jonathan Neame is the Chief Executive of the Shepherd Neame Brewery. And you hear from Jonathan's words there is clear confusion among pubs. I mean, what did that mean when the Prime Minister said that? And why would the Prime Minister not add, or at least have added later, let's make it clear, let's clarify this point? Because as far as I can see, it's just been left at what he said at a select committee from questions from fellow MPs. There's been no more meat put on the bones since he made that statement yesterday. It was a pretty important thing that he said. And I think the pub industry, the restaurant industry, need to know what he means by that. And some clarity from Downing Street, some clarity to say, actually, look, here's where I stand. And surely by any sensible measure you would bolt onto the back of that statement if you were going to say vaccinations if landlords want it, or we would also recommend a certificate to say you've had a negative test.